So, that was my bare minimum prototype, which I've created in the Unreal Engine, since obviously I have switched, and for college we're using Unreal instead of any other game engine. And it showcases the core mechanic of my game and how it will play out, which is, of course, the rotation mechanic. It is what my game's entire idea is built up on, and it's the USP, also known as the unique selling point of the game. The concept of the game was actually one I thought up a long time ago when I was working on Godot. And well, I think for college, with how little time we have to focus on game, it's the perfect thing to execute. But first and foremost, I had to write a GDD. And for those of you who don't know, it's a game design document. These are the bane of my existence, because organizing my thoughts, executing them in the correct order is something that I did not do for Dwarvain. Dwarvain was one where I came up with the ideas, threw them together and placed them down. And that might have been to my detriment. So, I opened Milano, which is where I organize everything, and I tried out writing how the game will work. This is also part of the assignment I have to do, so it is mandatory whether I'd like to or not. This is how it went. I organized each document and the main page, which shows the MVP of the game, the minimal viable product. Before writing out the long stuff, I sketched out this in Microsoft Paint. A simple example of how the player has the input to rotate the level, shoot in 4 directions, has collectibles and level objectives, which are the power cells which allow you to continue the level into the next area. The final version of the game will have 5 different areas, which when you traverse through them, more challenges will be added. The player is also time limited, as well. The ship is on a collision course with Earth, hence why the name I came up with for the game is called Scalar Trajectory. This is not a full name, this is just a code name for the moment. The style of the game, of course, as well, I was coming up with is a low poly 3D, which is a side-scrolling platformer, think like Little Big Planet, with a 2D sprite as the main character. Now, this may be a terrible idea, but I want your guys' opinion on it. Do you think a 2D sprite or a 3D character would be better suited? Now, for the fun stuff, I had to see if the idea of rotation worked in Engine, so I opened Unreal, created a blueprint timeline that allows rotation to occur, and this, well, to begin, did not work at all. Instead, the player got sent all over the place, everywhere, because the level would just spin indefinitely. I realized what happened was, it was rotating by 90 degrees every millisecond instead of over the course of the timeline. To fix this, I had to do a bunch of math conversion, but in the end, it ended up like this. I had to also uncheck a few things in Unreal's character movement to retain the correct in-air movement, because if you don't have stay based in air checked, what happens is when you rotate the level, the player tries to glue itself back down to the nearest ground, which causes a few issues, we could say. And after all that, it was asset importing time, since because this is a prototype, I was not going to spend my entire time making new assets and coming up with it for it to just not work. So I brought in some of the Kenny assets I had, and I put together this demo level using a design I came up with on Milano, the totally genius professional level design, of course. This was the level initially before I added more to get the overall vibe to it. Let me know what you think in the comments actually, because as you can see, the fundamentals are there, albeit a bit buggy at time. And one thing I learned was how frame rate dependent this idea is. The lower the frame rate, the more unstable the physics would get. Capping it at 30 would risk losing the player to the world at times, with them clipping through walls. While I am working on this prototype, I am also taking your awesome ideas from the comments below, and listing them out as my current assignments, such as these two. A third-person space pong game with objects falling from the sky, and a reverse car driving simulator where you must cross a bridge using only your mirrors. These ideas from you, the community, are awesome, and I love them. So I'll be bringing them to reality in the future videos where I work 48 hours on them. It may or may not be the 48-hour consecutive, so I have 2 days, or it'll be a total of 48 hours. Now, if you also have ideas, be sure to comment them below, because I'll try make yours too when I can. After the frame rate issues, I turned to the idea of just rotating the character rather than the level itself. I downloaded this gravity plugin that allows you to use directional gravity and created an alternate level making use of its functions. And while it worked, it had lost a lot of cool features that I thought of, such as physics objects flying around in the background. Because I was thinking back to whenever you played Little Big Planet or anything similar, where things would happen in the background even if you weren't able to interact with them. I thought it brought more life to the game. It also removed a part of the weight to the rotating of the ship. The character felt like he was in more control, and it was snappier, but it meant that it didn't feel like you were on a ship that was rotating. Now, you could argue that it's snappier and may feel better, and that's why I want your opinions on the both types. I got some feedback off you currently in the Discord, and you seem to prefer the original way I went to it. I did a blind test with both versions of footage and asked which looked cooler, and 9 out of 10 of yous who seen it settled on the level rotating around the character. This directed me to continue working with the level rotation instead of the character rotation, and so I did. I added in the 2D character instead of 3D, making use of the sprite from my old Godot game Stealing Metal, and the plugin Paper ZD on Unreal is insanely useful and allowed me to make animation blueprints for the character even while it being a 2D sprite, allowing very flexible changing of the animations. So for falling, jumping, running, idling, it was so easy to set up. While the player runs around each level, it is set up with 3 power cells to open the exit door. So you have to go around the level, find the 3 power cells, and then you can leave to the next area. Currently they're just highlighted cubes in green because, well, it's a prototype of course, but they'll be similar to a green Duracell battery when finalized. I also have the specimen samples, which act as a form of score, think like your coins from Mario. And as you progress through the ship, these will increase and they'll appear on the leaderboard down the line when you complete the game. With all these implemented and a way to lose based on the timer running out, I'd created a MMVP, also known as my minimum viable product. It is the core bare bones mechanics of the game, while not including the combat and start and end screens just yet. I have shared this around for feedback, and you've given me brilliant ideas, such as the sliding door, which only opens when the level is rotated at a certain direction. Now, while working on your projects, I'll continue to put this prototype together into a MVP, and then I'll upload it to the Discord where you'll also be able to try it and tell me what you think of it and what should be added. If you haven't already, you can join the Discord down below. So, what now, you may be thinking? Well, since this is my final college project, I am trying to ensure that it can be the best it can be, while keeping in mind that there's a very limited development window. It is with this that I also want your input on how to shape it. The final goal is 5 sections of the ship that you must traverse through, each one adding a new mechanic. For example, Section 1 giving you the ability to rotate. Section 2 allows you to solve the puzzle mechanics of shut doors and room breaches. Section 3 implements the rifle with the enemies to combat. Section 4 and 5 finally culminating in working between all the previous editions and completing the game. Now, if you've made it this far, I want to say thank you so much for the support. You, the community, have grown so insanely fast. Well, in the last week, we've jumped from 250 of you to nearly 400. And if you haven't already, do consider subscribing if you'd be interested in more content like this. Thanks as always, and I'll see you in the next one.